Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy History Channel. Tonight, we journey into the world of ancient Sparta. This was a city unlike any other in Greece. Its people built a way of life around discipline. They turned citizenship into a demanding test that shaped the body from childhood. They created a reputation so powerful that other cities feared them before battle even began. Yet Sparta was never simple. Behind the famous image of strength was a society full of tension. Its laws praised self-control. Its families lived under pressure. Its power depended on people who were not free. That is what makes Sparta so fascinating. It was admired across the ancient world. It was also questioned by some of the sharpest minds of Greece. The more closely we look, the more complicated it becomes. Tonight, we will explore a civilization that still grips the imagination. Not as a myth, not as a symbol, but as a real place shaped by human choices. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, there's nothing you need to do but relax. Let your body soften. Allow your breathing to slow. And as your mind begins to loosen its grip on the day, join me as we explore the strange power of Sparta together. Let's begin. Sparta turned an entire society into a military machine. To understand Sparta, it helps to imagine a city that did not treat warfare as a profession, but as the center of public life. Other Greek cities had armies. Sparta became known for shaping citizens who lived as soldiers almost from the beginning. The ideal Spartan man was expected to train, obey, endure hardship, and place the strength of the community above private comfort. This did not happen by accident. The state controlled education, meals, discipline, and reputation in ways that made ordinary life feel like preparation for battle. Even leisure carried a public purpose because the citizen body was meant to stay ready. What makes this so striking is that Sparta was not the largest or richest Greek power. Its influence came from an unusually focused social design. The city became famous because its people seemed to have solved one terrifying question. How do you build a community that can hold together when fear begins? Spartan boys entered state training when they were only 7. At an age when most children are still held close by family life, young Spartans were placed into a system that belonged to the city. This training was called the agoge, and it was designed to make boys resilient, obedient, and intensely aware of their place among others. They lived in groups. They learnt discipline through older youths and were watched by adults who judged their conduct closely. Reading and music mattered, but comfort did not. The deeper lesson was endurance. A boy had to become used to hunger, cold, pressure, and correction without losing control of himself. The point was not only to create fighters, it was to create citizens who would not break apart under stress. That is why the training seems so extreme to us now. Sparta believed character could be forged by removing softness early. Childhood became a public project, and the child was shaped into part of the city's future strength. Sparta had 2 kings, ruling side by side. Most monarchies become unstable when more than one person can claim the throne, but Sparta turned shared kingship into a permanent institution. The city had 2 royal houses, each with its own king, and both were believed to descend from heroic ancestry. This arrangement gave Sparta a strange kind of balance. One king could lead an army while the other remained at home. A royal line could continue even if one family suffered a crisis. Power was divided, but it was not uncontrolled. Kings still had to answer to other institutions, and they could be challenged by officials who represented the wider state. Their role combined command, ritual, and prestige. They were not absolute rulers in the later sense. They were sacred figures and military leaders operating inside a system that watched them carefully. This made Spartan government unusually fascinating because it mixed monarchy with restraint. Authority was honored, but never allowed to stand entirely alone. Spartan women held freedoms that shocked other Greek cities. In much of the Greek world, respectable women were expected to live under close domestic control. Sparta developed a very different reputation. Girls exercised publicly, received physical training, and were encouraged to become strong because the city connected healthy mothers with future citizens. Women could also manage property, especially when men spent long periods in military life or died in war. This gave them a public presence that outsiders noticed with surprise. Some Greek writers admired them. Others clearly found them unsettling. What makes their position so remarkable is not that Sparta was equal in a modern sense. It was not. But compared with many neighboring societies, Spartan women occupied a far more visible and forceful place. They were expected to speak boldly, run households efficiently, and understand the demands of the state. Their confidence became part of Sparta's legend because it challenged what many Greeks thought a woman's life should look like. The famous 300 fought to protect a narrow mountain pass. The stand at Thermopylae became one of the most remembered moments in ancient history because the setting made courage painfully visible. A vast Persian army was moving into Greece, and the Greeks needed time. The pass offered a rare advantage. Between steep ground and the sea, numbers mattered less than discipline. Leonidas and his force were not alone at the start, but the Spartans became the center of the story because they stayed when retreat became likely. Their purpose was not to win in the ordinary sense. It was to delay, resist, and turn sacrifice into strategy. The pass forced the enemy to confront them in a confined space, where training and formation could count for more than size. Later generations remembered the episode as a lesson in duty under impossible pressure. Its power comes from the contrast. A small force stood in a narrow place, and the memory spread across the world. Helots outnumbered Spartans, and that fear shaped everything. Beneath the image of the disciplined citizen soldier was a much larger population forced to serve the Spartan state. These people were called Helots, and many worked the land that supported Spartan households. Their labor allowed citizens to devote themselves to training and public duties, but it also created a permanent danger. The ruling class was small, and the people it controlled were far more numerous. That imbalance shaped the entire Spartan mindset. Security was not only about foreign enemies. It was also about preventing revolt at home. The need to dominate this subject population helps explain why Sparta became so strict, suspicious, and militarized. A society built on control must constantly worry about losing control. This gives Sparta its darker complexity. The same system that produced famous warriors depended on people denied freedom. The city's strength and anxiety grew from the same source, which makes its history impossible to understand as simple heroism. Spartan soldiers wore red cloaks for a chilling battlefield reason. The color became one of the most famous visual signs of Spartan warfare. Ancient writers claimed the red cloak helped hide blood, which meant a wounded man would not easily reveal weakness to either friend or enemy. Whether this explanation was practical, symbolic, or partly legendary, the idea fits the Spartan reputation perfectly. On the battlefield, appearance mattered because fear could spread faster than wounds. A warrior who looked composed helped steady the men around him. The cloak also made Spartans instantly recognizable, turning uniformity into intimidation. Imagine seeing a block of soldiers advancing in similar dress. trained to move together, and surrounded by stories of their discipline. The effect would not be accidental. Sparta understood that war lived in the mind before weapons ever touched. A shared color could become a message. It told opponents that these men expected pain, and it told comrades that no one should appear shaken by it. The Spartan state valued silence almost as much as courage. In Sparta, speech was not supposed to wander. A good answer was short, controlled, and sharp enough to be remembered. This style became so famous that the word laconic comes from Laconia, the region around Sparta. The point was more than cleverness. Speech revealed character. A person who used too many words might seem undisciplined, boastful, or weak. Spartan education encouraged young people to answer directly, often with a biting edge. This made their sayings travel across the Greek world like small weapons. Outsiders loved repeating them because they sounded fearless. A short reply could humiliate a threat, dismiss an insult, or turn danger into a joke. Silence also had power. In a noisy political culture full of speeches, Spartan restraint seemed almost unnerving. It suggested that confidence did not need explanation. Their ideal was not eloquence for display. It was language stripped down until only force remained. Sparta became powerful without building grand city walls. Many ancient cities trusted stone for protection. Towers, dates, and defensive circuits declared strength to anyone approaching. Sparta became famous for claiming that its men were its walls. This was more than pride. It was a political statement. The city wanted its enemies to believe that defense lived in trained bodies rather than masonry. For a long time, the reputation worked. Sparta's location in the Eurotas Valley and its military system helped make invasion difficult. More importantly, the idea of an unwalled city fed the legend of fearless confidence. To say you did not need walls was to say that courage itself could guard a homeland. Of course, this image also had limits. No society remains unchanged forever, and later generations faced a world in which old assumptions no longer held. Still, the boast endured because it captured the Spartan imagination. Protection was not a structure. It was a disciplined citizen standing his ground. Ancient Greece feared Sparta because its army rarely broke. In Greek warfare, the moment of collapse mattered more than the first clash. Hoplite battles often turned when one side lost nerve, opened gaps, or began to run. Sparta's danger came from its ability to hold formation under pressure. Its citizens trained for obedience, coordination, and emotional control from youth. They were expected to move as part of a line rather than as isolated heroes. This made them frightening opponents. An enemy could face men who seemed unwilling to panic, even when conditions became brutal. The psychological effect was enormous. Before a battle began, the Spartan name already carried weight. Other Greek forces might have brave soldiers, but Sparta cultivated a whole public identity around steadiness. That reputation could influence decisions long before spears met shields. The army's power lay not only in skill, but in expectation. People believed Spartans would not easily break, and belief itself became part of the weapon. The agoge trained boys through hunger, discipline, and endurance. This system was not a school in the ordinary sense. It was a long public apprenticeship in toughness. Young Spartans learned to live with discomfort because the city believed hardship exposed weakness and then burned it away. Food was limited enough to make hunger familiar. Sleep could be rough. Correction was expected. Older youths became examples, rivals, and sometimes enforcers. The lesson was constant. A boy had to master himself before he could be trusted beside others. Yet the agoge also created deep bonds. Those who endured together formed a shared identity that lasted into adult life. This mattered in battle, where each man's courage helped protect the line. The training was meant to make obedience feel natural, even when danger made the body want to flee. To modern eyes, it can seem severe. To Sparta, it was the furnace in which citizenship was made. Spartan children learned to speak with sharp, unforgettable brevity. A young Spartan was not praised for long explanations. He was expected to answer with precision, and sometimes with wit sharp enough to sting. Adults trained children to make their words lean and controlled. This habit produced some of the most famous sayings in Greek history, although many were later polished by storytellers. The deeper truth is that Sparta treated speech as a discipline of character. A child who rambled had not mastered himself. A child who answered clearly showed readiness, nerve, and intelligence. The style also suited a society that distrusted display. Public life did not require the flowing speeches admired in Athens. It required firmness. The result was a culture where a handful of words could carry surprising force. A threat might be met with a reply so short that it became legendary. In that world, language was not decoration. It was a test of composure under attention. A Spartan meal could test loyalty as much as appetite. The common dining group was one of the most important institutions in Spartan life. A citizen did not simply eat at home whenever he pleased. He belonged to a mess group, and this group helped define his place among other men. Meals created discipline because they made equality visible in daily routine. Everyone was expected to contribute from his household resources, and failure to do so could threaten a man's standing. This turned food into a measure of belonging. The table was not only about nourishment. It was about loyalty, reputation, and participation in the citizen body. Eating together also kept private luxury under control. A man who spent too much time in comfort away from others could seem suspiciously soft. The group watched, judged, and reinforced shared values. In Sparta, even dinner could serve the state. The simple act of sitting with others became part of the machinery of citizenship. Black broth became the most infamous dinner in Greece. Among all Spartan customs, few captured outside imagination like their notorious stew. It was said to be made with pork, blood, vinegar, and salt, and ancient visitors treated it as proof of Spartan hardness. One famous story claims that a foreigner tasted it and finally understood why Spartans did not fear death. The joke is brutal, but revealing. Food became a symbol of the city's refusal to chase pleasure. Whether every detail of the recipe was exact or exaggerated, the reputation mattered. To other Greeks who enjoyed banquets, wine, fish, sauces, and conversation, the Spartan meal seemed almost anti-luxury. It turned eating into endurance. That is why the dish became larger than itself. It represented a whole attitude toward life. The body did not need delight. It needed enough strength to serve. The most fascinating part is that Sparta's enemies helped preserve the legend, because disgust can be as memorable as admiration. Spartan men ate in common messes for most of life. After childhood training, a citizen's public obligations did not disappear. Adult men joined dining groups that bound them to one another long after they had families of their own. These groups were called syssitia, and membership mattered deeply. A man ate with comrades regularly, sharing plain food and conversation within a controlled social setting. This arrangement kept the citizen body from dissolving into private households. It reminded every member that his first loyalty belonged to the state. The mess also created trust among men who might stand near one another in war. Familiarity, discipline, and mutual judgment all gathered around the same table. Entry into a group required acceptance, which made it a social checkpoint as well as a habit. The system reveals how thoroughly Sparta organized life. The state did not stop at training or battlefield command. It reached into the evening meal, where identity was renewed again and again. Citizenship depended on paying for meals with shared produce. Being born Spartan was not always enough to remain fully recognized as one of the equals. A citizen had to meet obligations, and one of the most important was contributing to his dining group. These contributions came from the produce of land worked by dependent laborers. If a man could not provide his share, he risked losing full status. This detail is startling because it shows how fragile Spartan equality could be. The community spoke of shared discipline, but participation required material support. Poverty could push someone out of the inner circle, even if his ancestry was correct. The system tied politics, land, and food into one structure. A plate at the common meal represented more than dinner. It represented membership in the ruling class. This helps explain why declining citizen numbers became such a serious problem. Sparta needed disciplined men, but it also needed those men to afford the duties of citizenship. Spartans called themselves equals, although their society was deeply unequal. Full Spartan citizens used a name that suggested sameness among themselves. In theory, they shared training, meals, duties, and a public code of conduct. This ideal made the citizen group feel like a brotherhood. Yet the wider society around them tells a different story. Many people who lived under Spartan control had no share in that equality. Some were subject workers. Others were free, but excluded from political power. Even among citizens, wealth and influence were not perfectly even. The name therefore reveals both the power and the contradiction of Spartan identity. Equality existed inside a narrow circle, and that circle guarded its privileges fiercely. This is one reason Sparta remained so compelling. It forces us to ask who is included when a society praises unity. The answer was never everyone. Spartan discipline created a strong bond among the few, but that bond rested on boundaries that shaped every part of life. The Helots found the land that made Spartan leisure possible. The famous warrior lifestyle required someone else to do the constant work of agriculture. Helots cultivated estates, produced food, and supported the households of the citizen class. Without them, Spartan men could not have spent so much time in training, politics, and military readiness. This creates one of the central ironies of Sparta. The citizens were praised for discipline, but their freedom from ordinary labor depended on the labor of others. Farming in ancient Greece was demanding and seasonal. Fields had to be managed, harvests collected, and produce delivered. The Helot system made this possible at scale. It also made Spartan society tense, because dependence can create fear as well as comfort. The people who fed the state were also the people the state distrusted. Every cloak, shield, and public meal was connected to the hidden work of those below. Sparta's military identity grew from the soil and from the hands forced to cultivate it. Messenia became Sparta's conquered heartland after long, bitter wars. Sparta's rise cannot be understood without the conquest of a neighboring region rich in farmland. Messenia lay to the west, and its incorporation transformed Spartan history. The struggle was remembered as difficult and prolonged, with resistance strong enough to leave deep marks on both peoples. Once subdued, Messenia gave Sparta access to agricultural wealth far beyond what its original territory could provide. It also gave Sparta a large dependent population whose resentment never vanished. This conquest changed the city from a powerful local community into a dominant territorial state. It supplied the material base for the citizen lifestyle, but it also created a permanent security problem. The land that made Sparta stronger also made it anxious. That is what makes Messenia so important. It was not simply territory added to a map. It was the foundation of Sparta's power and the wound beneath its confidence. Helot revolts haunted Spartan politics for generations. A society that depends on a controlled population must always worry about resistance. For Sparta, this worry was not imaginary. Helot unrest remained a constant concern, especially in Messenia, where memory of conquest endured. The most frightening moments came when natural disaster or military pressure weakened Spartan authority. After a major earthquake in the 5th century before the Common Era, rebellion became a severe crisis, and Sparta had to struggle to restore control. This fear influenced diplomacy, military decisions, and internal discipline. Spartan leaders could not simply send all forces far away without considering what might happen at home. The threat of revolt gave urgency to the city's harsh systems. It also limited Sparta's freedom in ways that are easy to miss. Behind its reputation for fearless strength stood a government watching its own countryside with unease. The past was never fully settled there. It remained alive in the possibility that the people below might rise. The Cryptaea turned young Spartans into secret countryside hunters. Among Sparta's most disturbing institutions was a hidden rite that seems to have tested young men in secrecy, survival, and intimidation. The details are debated because ancient writers describe it from outside the system. Still, the basic picture is chilling. Selected youths were sent into the countryside with simple equipment and little support. They moved at night, watched the dependent population, and learned to live beyond ordinary supervision. Some accounts say they were expected to kill helots who seemed especially strong or threatening. Whether this was a formal terror campaign, an initiation, or both, it reveals the darker side of Spartan training. Public discipline was only one face of the city. Behind it was a willingness to use fear as policy. For the young participants, the experience may have been framed as a test of courage. For the people being watched, it must have made the landscape itself feel dangerous after sunset. Spartan courage depended on a population held under terror. The clean image of fearless warriors becomes far more complicated when you look beneath it. Spartan citizens could devote themselves to public duty because another population lived under coercion. That arrangement did not stay stable through kindness. It required surveillance, punishment, and the constant reminder that resistance would be dangerous. This is one reason Sparta feels so unsettling to modern eyes. Its courage on the battlefield was real, but it was supported by a system that kept many people afraid. The famous calm of the citizen soldier was made possible by a social order full of pressure below him. This does not erase Spartan achievement. It makes the achievement harder to romanticize. Every society has hidden costs, and Sparta's were unusually stark. The city teaches us that discipline and brutality can exist in the same structure. Its power came not only from self-control, but from the control of others. Perioikoi made weapons, traded goods, and lived without citizenship. Around the Spartan citizen body lived communities known as the perioikoi. They were not enslaved, and they were not full members of the ruling class. Their position was one of the most important in the Spartan world because they filled roles citizens avoided or were discouraged from pursuing. They worked as craftsmen, sailors, merchants, and producers. They helped supply armor, tools, pottery, and other essentials that kept the state functioning. This makes them easy to overlook and impossible to remove from the story. Sparta's public image valued austerity and military readiness, but even the plainest warrior needed someone to make his equipment. The perioikoi also connected Sparta to wider economic life. They lived in towns across Laconia and Messenia, forming a practical layer between citizens and the people forced to work the land. Their existence shows that Sparta was never only a camp of soldiers. It was a network of unequal communities. Sparta needed outsiders to do much of its skilled work. The Spartan ideal placed full citizens above trade and manual production, but a city cannot survive on ideals alone. Metal had to be shaped. Leather had to be worked. Ships had to be built when naval power became necessary. Markets needed goods, and households needed everyday objects. Since citizen men were expected to focus on public service and military readiness, much of this practical labor fell to people outside the full citizen class. That fact quietly undermines the simplest version of the Spartan legend. The famous simplicity of the ruling group depended on a much broader world of skill. Craftspeople turned raw materials into tools. Traders moved supplies. Local communities supported a system that liked to present itself as self-sufficient. Sparta could praise toughness while relying on expertise it did not always honor publicly. Behind every polished spear point was a maker whose hands rarely appear in heroic stories. Without those hands, the legend could not function. Iron money supposedly made Spartan wealth deliberately inconvenient. Ancient tradition says Sparta used heavy iron currency instead of precious silver and gold. The story may be partly idealized, but its message is powerful. Money that was awkward to store or move would make luxury harder to pursue. It would reduce the temptation to hoard wealth, fund private extravagance, or bribe officials with easy riches. The point was not economic efficiency. The point was moral engineering. Sparta wanted its citizens to think of wealth as dangerous when it weakened discipline. Imagine a society deliberately making money less attractive because it feared what desire could do. Even if the historical reality was more complex, the tale shows how outsiders understood Sparta. They saw a city trying to restrain greed by changing the tools of exchange. In most places, money opens possibilities. In this story, money becomes a burden on purpose. That is why the iron currency remains such a memorable symbol of Spartan suspicion. Spartans distrusted luxury because comfort seemed dangerous to discipline. To many Greeks, fine objects showed success. To Sparta, they could look like warnings. Soft clothing, elaborate houses, costly food, and private indulgence all carried the risk of weakening public purpose. The Spartan ideal treated the body as something that had to be trained away from ease. Desire was not merely personal. It could become political if it pulled citizens away from duty. This is why stories about Spartan austerity became so famous. Whether every detail was accurate or sharpened by legend, the reputation captured a real cultural value. A citizen who loved comfort too openly might seem unreliable when hardship came. A state that depended on endurance could not afford admiration for softness. Yet the suspicion of luxury also created tension because wealth still existed and inequality did not disappear. Sparta tried to make simplicity a civic virtue. The difficulty was that human appetite does not vanish just because a lawgiver disapproves of it. Long hair became a proud mark of Spartan masculinity. In battle, appearance can become a kind of announcement. Spartan men were famous for wearing their hair long after reaching adulthood, a custom that set them apart from many other Greeks. It was not a careless style. It carried meaning. Long hair could suggest freedom, status, and readiness for danger. Ancient tradition even claimed it made handsome men look finer, and intimidating men look more fearsome. That idea matters because Spartans understood the theater of war. A warrior did not only fight with spear and shield. He also entered the enemy's imagination before the first collision. Hair, cloak, posture, and silence worked together to create an image of controlled confidence. For young men who had survived years of training, the style marked arrival into the adult warrior community. It said that the boy had become part of a public ideal. Even something as ordinary as hair became a sign of belonging. Warriors combed their hair before battle with unsettling calm. Before a dangerous fight, most people might imagine frantic preparation. Spartan tradition gives us a stranger picture. Men facing combat were said to arrange their hair carefully, especially before famous moments of danger. To outsiders, this could seem almost unreal. Yet the gesture made sense within their culture. It showed composure when fear should have taken over. It also treated battle as a public test in which dignity mattered. A man who prepared his appearance before violence was sending a message. He expected to meet danger without disorder. This was not vanity in the ordinary sense. It was ritualized self-control. The act slowed the moment down and gave the warrior something precise to do with his hands. It also presented the enemy with a terrifying calm. The sight suggested that these men were not rushing into panic. They were making themselves ready for an ordeal they had already accepted in their minds. Shields mattered because dropping one betrayed the whole line. In the Greek phalanx, the shield was not only personal protection. It helped guard the man beside you. This made it morally different from a helmet or breastplate. Losing those might suggest misfortune, but abandoning a shield could suggest that a man had thrown away his duty to the group. A spear could be used for attack. A shield proved that survival depended on mutual trust. When men stood shoulder to shoulder, each person's steadiness affected everyone near him. If one soldier fled, a gap opened. If a gap opened, danger could pour through it. That is why Spartan culture attached such shame to coming back without this essential piece of equipment. The object became a test of loyalty. It was heavy, practical, and symbolic all at once. A warrior carried his place in the formation on his arm. To drop it was to leave more than bronze and wood behind. Spartan mothers were remembered for brutally direct farewell sayings. Some of the sharpest lines in Spartan tradition are placed in the mouths of women. A mother was said to tell her son to return with his shield or upon it. The phrase may be shaped by later memory, but it captures the cultural role expected of Spartan families. Women were not supposed to soften the demands of the state. They were imagined as reinforcing them. These sayings are startling because they bring public values into the most intimate relationship of all. A mother's love appears not as protection from danger, but as insistence that dishonor is worse than death. That is why the stories endured. They show how deeply the ideal of courage reached into household life. Whether every saying was spoken exactly as preserved is less important than the standard they reveal. Sparta wanted even farewell to carry discipline. The family doorway became another place where the city reminded a young man who he was meant to be. Girls trained their bodies in ways many Greeks found astonishing. Female physical education was one of Sparta's most famous differences. Girls ran, wrestled, exercised, and competed in public settings that would have seemed bold elsewhere. The reason was rooted in Spartan ideas about the body and the state. Strong women were believed to bear strong children, and the city treated that belief as a public matter. This did not make girlhood free in the modern sense. Their training served the needs of the community. Still, it gave Spartan girls a visibility unusual in the Greek world. They moved in spaces where other cities often kept girls more restricted. Outsiders commented on their confidence and sometimes criticized it sharply. The fascination tells us how unusual Sparta seemed even to its neighbors. A girl's strength was not treated as a private accident. It was cultivated. In that choice, Sparta turned the female body into part of its civic project. which made its society both distinctive and controversial. Spartan women could own land and manage major estates. Property gave women in Sparta a level of influence that surprised ancient observers. Because citizen men spent much of life in public institutions or military service, women often played a serious role in household management. Over time, inheritance patterns and the loss of male citizens in war could concentrate land in female hands. This mattered enormously because land was the base of wealth, status, and contribution to public life. A woman who controlled an estate was not merely arranging domestic details. She was connected to the economic survival of a citizen household. Ancient critics sometimes treated this as a dangerous imbalance, which tells us how powerful the reality could appear. Sparta did not grant political equality, but property could create authority outside formal office. This makes Spartan women historically fascinating. They lived in a society built for male warriors, yet some of them held the resources that allowed that warrior class to continue. Some Spartan women became among the richest people in Greece. By the classical period, observers claimed that a remarkable share of Spartan land had come under female control. This was not because Sparta sought modern equality. It grew from inheritance, dowries, family loss, and the shrinking number of full citizen households. When property concentrated, certain women could become extraordinarily wealthy by Greek standards. Their influence did not always appear through speeches or offices. It appeared through estates, marriages, household resources, and the ability to sustain status across generations. This wealth made outsiders uneasy because it challenged their assumptions about gender and power. A society famous for male discipline had allowed women to become central to its economic structure. That contradiction fascinated critics. It also reveals how systems can produce outcomes their founders may not have intended. Sparta tried to regulate life tightly, yet property still moved through families in unpredictable ways. In the end, some women stood near the financial heart of the very state that excluded them from formal rule. Marriage in Sparta involved ritual secrecy and unusual customs. Spartan marriage was surrounded by practices that seemed strange to other Greeks. Ancient accounts describe brides having their hair cut short, wearing male clothing for part of the ritual, and being visited by husbands in secrecy at first. Scholars debate the meaning of these customs, but they suggest a society that treated marriage as more than romance or household formation. It was a transition managed through symbols. The cutting of hair may have marked a change in status. The hidden visits may have preserved the husband's connection to male communal life while beginning a new family bond. Such customs remind us that Sparta did not separate private life from public purpose. Even intimacy was shaped by civic expectations. The state needed children, households, and inheritance, but it also wanted adult men bound to their dining groups and training culture. Marriage therefore became a careful negotiation between family and city. Personal life had to fit the Spartan design. Spartan babies were inspected for physical strength after birth. Ancient writers tell us that newborns were examined by elders who judged whether they seemed fit to be raised. This is one of the most famous and troubling stories about Sparta, and modern historians debate how literally every detail should be taken. Still, the tradition reveals something important about Spartan values. The city imagined itself as having a claim over life from the beginning. A child was not only a private joy. A child was a future member of the community and therefore subject to communal judgment. The story is often repeated because it feels so stark. It shows a world where survival was linked to public usefulness in a way that now feels deeply uncomfortable. Whether practice and legend perfectly matched, the idea itself shaped Sparta's reputation. It suggested that weakness had no protected space. From the earliest moment, the needs of the state could stand beside the cradle. Plutarch preserved many famous Spartan stories centuries after Sparta's peak. Much of what people think they know about Sparta comes through writers who lived long after its greatest age. Plutarch, a Greek author under Roman rule, collected sayings, biographies, and moral examples that helped preserve the Spartan legend. His work is invaluable, but it must be read carefully. He was not a newspaper reporter watching classical Sparta unfold. He was a later thinker interested in character, virtue, and memorable lessons. This means his stories can carry truth while also being shaped for effect. A sharp reply may be polished. A custom may be simplified. A famous scene may reveal what later generations wanted Sparta to mean. That does not make the material useless. It makes it fascinating. We are often studying two Spartas at once. One was the historical city in Laconia. The other was the remembered Sparta, sharpened by admiration, criticism, and moral storytelling across centuries. Lycurgus may be more legend than historical lawgiver. The figure credited with shaping Sparta's laws stands at the edge of history and myth. Ancient writers treated Lycurgus as the great founder of the Spartan way of life, the man who gave the city its discipline and institutions. Yet when historians look closely, he becomes difficult to pin down. Different traditions place him in different periods. Stories about him often feel symbolic rather than biographical. He may have been a real reformer whose memory grew larger with time. He may also represent a collection of changes later attributed to one powerful name. This uncertainty matters because societies often explain themselves through founders. By turning complex development into the work of a single lawgiver, Sparta could imagine its customs as deliberate, ancient, and sacred. Lycurgus became the answer to a question every outsider asked. How did this strange society begin? The mystery is that the answer may be a legend wearing a human face. Sparta's constitution was admired because it seemed strangely balanced. Ancient thinkers were fascinated by the way Spartan government combined different forms of rule. It had kingship, but not absolute monarchy. It had councils, but not simple aristocracy. It had an assembly, but not democracy in the Athenian sense. To some observers, this mixture seemed unusually stable. Each part checked another part, at least in theory. The result looked like a political machine built to resist extremes. That reputation helped Sparta become a model in debates about good government. Philosophers and historians could point to it as evidence that balance might preserve order. Of course, admiration did not mean the system was fair to everyone. Most people under Spartan control had no political voice. Even so, the citizen constitution impressed outsiders because it appeared old, disciplined, and resistant to sudden passion. Sparta became not only a military example, but a political puzzle. Its government seemed both rigid and carefully divided. The Gerousia gave elderly men extraordinary political power. Age carried real authority in Sparta. The Gerousia was a council of elders, and its members had to be at least 60 years old. This mattered because 60 was the age when Spartan men were released from regular military obligation. In public life, however, their influence could become even greater. The council helped prepare business for the assembly and served important judicial functions. Its members were chosen for life, which gave them continuity and prestige. To a society obsessed with discipline and tradition, old age could represent tested character. The elders had survived the system, served the state, and accumulated judgment through decades of public duty. Yet lifetime power also meant that conservative voices held enormous weight. Change had to pass through men whose authority came from the past. This gives Sparta another layer of complexity. It was a warrior society, but some of its highest power rested with those beyond the fighting age. Ephors could challenge kings and even put them on trial. Spartan kings looked impressive, but they did not rule without oversight. Each year, 5 officials called ephors were elected, and their authority could be startling. They supervised aspects of public life, handled foreign affairs, and watched the kings closely. They could bring charges against a king, and tradition says they regularly exchanged oaths with the royal powers. This created a political tension at the heart of Sparta. Sacred kingship stood beside annually chosen magistrates who could call it to account. The arrangement helped prevent any one ruler from turning royal prestige into unchecked command. It also made Spartan politics more dynamic than the image of rigid obedience suggests. Behind the disciplined exterior were negotiations, rivalries, and institutional limits. A king who led armies still had to think about the men at home who could judge his conduct. In Sparta, even inherited authority lived under the gaze of the state. The citizen assembly voted by shouting rather than counting ballots. The Spartan assembly did not operate like a modern parliament. Citizens gathered to approve or reject proposals, but ancient accounts describe a striking method of decision. Instead of individual written votes, the outcome could be judged by the volume of shouting. Officials listened and decided which side sounded stronger. To us, this feels imprecise, almost theatrical. Yet it fits a political culture that valued public presence, reputation, and collective expression. The system also limited debate. The assembly could show approval, but it did not become a place for long democratic argument in the Athenian style. Power remained guided by kings, elders, and ephors. Still, the shout mattered. It gave citizens a voice, even if that voice was managed through older institutions. Imagine a crowd of trained men answering a proposal not with ballots, but with sound. Politics became something heard in the body. Agreement rose as noise, and the state listened. Sparta's 2 royal houses traced descent from Heracles. Royal legitimacy in Sparta was wrapped in heroic ancestry. Both ruling lines claim descent from Heracles, one of the greatest figures of Greek myth. This was not decorative storytelling. In the ancient world, descent could shape authority. A king connected to a heroic bloodline seemed to stand closer to divine favor and ancient destiny. The claim also linked Sparta to wider Greek mythic memory, giving its local institutions a grander place in the shared imagination. Heracles was associated with strength, endurance, and extraordinary trials, which suited Spartan self-presentation almost perfectly. The kings could appear not merely as political leaders, but as heirs to a heroic pattern. Whether anyone could prove such ancestry was not the point. The belief carried power because it gave tradition a sacred depth. In Sparta, the past was not only remembered, it was recruited. Myth became part of the machinery that made royal authority feel old and necessary. Kings served as generals, priests, and symbols of ancient authority. A Spartan king did not have one simple job. On campaign, he could command armies and make decisions in moments of danger. At home, he performed religious duties that connected the city to the gods. In public imagination, he embodied continuity with ancestors and heroic tradition. This combination made kingship difficult to reduce to politics alone. Military leadership gave the office practical importance. Ritual responsibility gave it sacred weight. Ancestral prestige gave it emotional force. Yet these kings lived inside a system that limited them. Their honor was high, but their freedom was not unlimited. This balance made the office unusually rich. A king might lead men into enemy territory, offer sacrifice before action, and stand as a living reminder of Sparta's past. His body carried more than personal ambition. It carried a role that joined battlefield command with religious obligation. In that sense, kingship was not only power, it was performance under tradition. Royal funerals were among Sparta's rare moments of public extravagance. Sparta was famous for plainness, but the death of a king created an exception. Ancient descriptions suggest that royal funerals involved large displays of mourning, public participation, and ritual honor. People from across the territory could be required to attend. Men and women lamented, and the dead ruler received treatment far beyond ordinary simplicity. This contrast is revealing. A society that distrusted luxury still understood spectacle when the moment served the state. The funeral was not only grief for a person, it was a renewal of monarchy, memory, and collective identity. Public mourning reminded everyone that kingship belonged to something older than any single ruler. The display also helped transform death into continuity. One king was gone, but the institution remained. Such ceremonies show that Sparta's austerity was selective. When symbolism demanded grandeur, even this disciplined city could stage emotion on a large scale. Restraint did not erase ritual power. Spartan kings ate the same communal meals as other citizens. Despite their sacred ancestry and military authority, the kings were expected to participate in the shared dining customs of the citizen body. This is a remarkable detail because food often separates rulers from ordinary people. In many societies, kings dine apart in visible luxury. Sparta's system pulled them back into the disciplined rhythm of the group. They received honors, and they were not the same as everyone else in status. Yet the meal reminded them that royal power existed within the civic order. Sitting within the common dining structure made kingship look less like private magnificence and more like public service. The act had political meaning. It suggested that no Spartan, not even a king, should stand entirely outside the habits that shaped citizens. The table became a place where hierarchy and equality met uneasily. A ruler could claim heroic descent, then still take his place inside a culture that distrusted excess. Leonidas became legendary because his defeat felt like moral victory. History usually celebrates winners, but Leonidas became immortal through loss. His fame rests on the way the final stand was remembered. He obeyed duty when survival had become unlikely, and later generations saw that choice as greater than ordinary success. The story became powerful because it turned defeat into proof of character. In Greek memory, the fallen king represented loyalty to law, homeland, and comrades under unbearable pressure. His death also gave meaning to strategy. A delaying action could become a symbol that outlived the campaign itself. This is why his name still carries force. People are drawn to moments when the outcome is grim, but the decision remains clear. Leonidas did not become legendary because he conquered an empire. He became legendary because he seemed to show what a person owes when everything easy has disappeared. The battle ended in disaster for him, yet the memory became a form of triumph. Thermopylae was also fought by thousands of other Greeks. The popular version often narrows the story until only the Spartans remain. But the real defense involved a broader Greek force. Contingents from several communities stood at the pass during the campaign. Their presence matters because it changes the meaning of the event. This was not only a Spartan tale. It was part of the larger Greek response to invasion, shaped by alliance, fear, and desperate calculation. The Spartans became central because of their final role and later reputation, but the others should not vanish from memory. Some allies stayed into the last phase, and their choices deserve attention. History often simplifies because a single image is easier to remember than a coalition. Yet the fuller picture is more interesting. It shows a fragmented Greek world trying, however imperfectly, to act together. the courage at the pass belonged to more than one city, even if one city claimed the brightest flame of fame. The pass at Thermopylae magnified courage through geography. Some landscapes change history because they force armies to fight differently. Thermopylae was one of those places. Its narrow ground reduced the advantage of a much larger force and gave heavily armed defenders a chance to resist. The terrain turned numbers into frustration. Attackers could not easily surround the Greeks or bring their full strength forward at once. This gave disciplined infantry room to make time itself a weapon. Each hour of resistance mattered because it slowed the invasion and allowed decisions elsewhere. Geography did not create courage, but it gave courage a stage where it could matter. That is why the location became inseparable from the legend. A wide plain might have swallowed the defenders quickly. A narrow pass made their stand visible, prolonged, and memorable. The lesson is simple and profound. Sometimes the shape of the land allows a small group to become larger than itself in history. Spartan discipline helped win the Greek victory at Plataea. After the drama of earlier battles, the decisive land victory against Persia came at Plataea. There, a large Greek coalition faced a powerful enemy force, and Spartan leadership played a crucial role. The battle was complex, with movement, confusion, and danger before the final clash. What made the Spartans important was their ability to maintain order when circumstances became uncertain. Their commander Pausanias had to manage pressure while coordinating with allies who did not always move smoothly together. When fighting intensified, the steadiness of the Spartan hoplites helped anchor the Greek line. This victory mattered enormously because it ended the immediate Persian threat on land. It also showed that Spartan strength was not only useful in doomed resistance, it could contribute to a decisive success. Plataea deserves more attention because it reveals Sparta in a different light, not as a tragic symbol, but as part of a coalition that won a world-changing battle. Sparta later defeated Athens in the Peloponnesian War. The great struggle between Greece's leading powers lasted for decades and reshaped the ancient world. Athens had wealth, ships, walls, and an empire built around the sea. Sparta had land power, prestige, and allies who feared Athenian dominance. The conflict became exhausting because neither side could easily destroy the other at first. Plague struck Athens. Campaigns dragged on. Alliances shifted. Mistakes became catastrophic. In the end, Sparta adapted more than many expected. With Persian financial support, it helped build the naval strength needed to challenge Athens, where Athens had once seemed strongest. The final outcome stunned the Greek world. A city famous for hoplites had beaten the great naval democracy. Yet victory came at a cost. Sparta inherited responsibilities it was poorly suited to manage. The war proved that it could defeat its greatest rival, but it also pushed the city into a wider political role that would expose its limitations. Lysander changed Greek history by winning at Aegospotami. The final blow against Athens came not from a traditional land battle, but from a naval victory on the Hellespont. Lysander understood that Athens depended on grain routes, ships, and the confidence that came from controlling the sea. At Aegospotami, he struck at the fleet that protected that lifeline. Ancient accounts describe an Athenian force caught disastrously unprepared, with ships taken near the shore and crews scattered. The result was not just a defeat. It was the collapse of Athenian power. Without its navy, Athens could not feed itself securely or hold its empire together. Lysander then tightened pressure until the city surrendered. What makes this moment so striking is that a Spartan commander helped win by mastering the very arena Athens had dominated. The victory showed that Sparta could adapt when necessity demanded it. One battle beside a narrow waterway ended a long war and changed the balance of the Greek world. Sparta briefly became the leading power in the Greek world. After Athens surrendered, Sparta stood in a position that earlier generations could hardly have imagined. Its greatest rival had fallen, and many cities now looked toward Laconia with fear, hope, or resentment. The victory brought prestige, but it also brought responsibilities that were difficult to manage. Sparta was used to commanding allies in war, not governing a complicated Greek world in peace. Across the Aegean, it supported friendly regimes, placed garrisons, and tried to shape political outcomes far from home. This made the old image of restrained simplicity harder to maintain. A city that had warned against empire now found itself acting like an imperial power. The contradiction was obvious to its enemies and uncomfortable for its friends. Sparta had reached the summit, but the summit was unstable. Its triumph revealed a new problem. Winning control over Greece was one achievement. Holding that control without becoming what it once opposed was another. Victory over Athens exposed Sparta's weakness outside its homeland. The end of the Peloponnesian War should have marked Sparta's strongest moment, yet it quickly revealed how hard power can become a burden. Commanding distant cities required money, diplomacy, fleets, and flexible administration. These were not the qualities Sparta had spent centuries perfecting. Its citizen body was small, and its leaders often struggled to oversee faraway affairs without creating resentment. The city had excelled at discipline within a tight social world. The wider Greek world was messier. Allies wanted rewards. Subject cities resisted control. Ambitious commanders could become too powerful. Persian influence complicated every decision across the eastern Mediterranean. Sparta discovered that battlefield success did not automatically create political skill. The same habits that made it formidable at home could make it rigid abroad. Its triumph over Athens therefore became a turning point with a hidden cost. Sparta gained influence across Greece, then found that influence was harder to carry than a shield. The Battle of Leuctra shattered Sparta's military reputation. For generations, the Spartan army had seemed like the measure of Greek land warfare. Then, in a single battle in Boeotia, that aura cracked. The Thebans, led by Epaminondas, used an unusual formation, but concentrated strength on one wing. Instead of meeting the Spartan line in the expected way, they struck with depth and purpose against the most important part of the enemy formation. The result stunned Greece. Spartan citizens died in significant numbers, and one of the kings fell. The psychological damage was as serious as the tactical loss. If Sparta could be beaten in open battle, then the old fear surrounding its name was no longer unbreakable. Leuctra did not merely defeat an army. It changed what other Greeks believed was possible. A reputation built over centuries can feel permanent until the moment it fails. After Leuctra, Sparta still existed, but it no longer stood above the Greek world in the same way. Theban tactics broke the image of Spartan invincibility. The genius of the Theban approach lay in refusing to fight the battle Sparta expected. Greek armies often arranged their strongest troops on the right, which shaped how clashes unfolded. Epaminondas altered the pattern by massing his best force with extraordinary depth on the left. This allowed him to drive a powerful wedge into the Spartan side of the field. It was not magic. It was tactical imagination applied at the right moment. The sacred band of Thebes, an elite unit, helped give the attack remarkable force. The shock came from seeing Spartan discipline overcome by innovation. For so long, Sparta had trained to master the familiar rules of hoplite combat. Thebes showed that rules could be bent. This lesson echoed beyond one battlefield. It suggested that even the most feared military system could become vulnerable when opponents studied it carefully. Invincibility often dies when someone learns to think around it. Sparta never fully recovered after losing control of Messenia The liberation of Messenia after Leuctra struck at the base of Spartan life. This was not a minor territorial loss. It removed the land and labor that had helped sustain the citizen class for generations. When the Thebans founded Messene as an independent city, they did more than draw a new boundary. They broke the machinery that had made Sparta unusually powerful. Without that western region, Spartan households lost resources, and the old system became harder to maintain. The blow was economic, political, and symbolic all at once. A people long held under Spartan control now had a fortified center of their own. The balance of the Peloponnese shifted. Sparta remained proud, but pride could not replace lost land. This is why Messenia matters so deeply in the story of decline. The power that conquest had created was undone when conquest could no longer be preserved. The Spartan citizen population slowly declined across the classical age. One of Sparta's greatest weaknesses was not a sudden disaster, but a long narrowing of the citizen body. Full citizens had to meet social, economic, and hereditary requirements, and over time, fewer men qualified. War losses made the problem worse, but so did land concentration and the inability of some families to maintain their obligations. A state built around a small elite became more fragile as that elite shrank. Every lost citizen mattered because each one represented a trained soldier, a dining group member, and a political participant. This was not the same as ordinary population decline. It was the erosion of the class that held the whole structure together. Ancient observers noticed the problem, and later historians have seen it as one of the keys to Sparta's failure. The city had designed citizenship as a demanding privilege. The danger was that the privilege became so restricted that the state hollowed itself out. Too few full citizens made Sparta dangerously brittle. Strength can become weakness when it depends on a narrow foundation. Sparta's system produced a highly trained ruling group, but that group was difficult to replace. If citizens died in war, lost property, or failed to meet communal requirements, the state could not simply create new equals without threatening its own identity. This made the system rigid. A larger, more flexible city might absorb losses through trade, immigration, or broader political inclusion. Sparta resisted those paths. It prized purity of status and continuity of custom. The result was brittleness. A shock that damaged the citizen body could echo for decades. Military defeat hurt because men were lost, but also because the social order had so little room to recover. This is one of the most fascinating lessons of Sparta. The same exclusiveness that made citizenship feel powerful made the whole state vulnerable. A bronze shield may be strong, yet crack if struck in the wrong place. Spartan society feared change, because change could reveal weakness. Conservative habits were not just a matter of temperament. They protected a delicate arrangement. If Sparta changed too much, it risked admitting that its famous system was not eternal. If it changed too little, it risked being outpaced by rivals. This tension haunted the city. Reform could threaten old privileges, unsettle the citizen body, and weaken the authority of tradition. Yet the world around Sparta kept shifting. Naval warfare mattered more. Money moved through politics. Other cities experimented with tactics and alliances. Sparta's reputation depended on seeming steady, ancient, and unbending. That made adaptation psychologically difficult. To change was to suggest that the old ways were insufficient. To refuse change was to make insufficiency more dangerous. This is why Sparta can feel like a warning hidden inside a legend. A society may become so invested in its image of strength that it cannot admit where strength has become a trap. The city remained unwalled because its soldiers were its walls. The lack of a great defensive circuit became one of Sparta's proudest claims. It suggested a city so confident in its fighting men that stone seemed unnecessary. This was not only a military statement, it was a statement about identity. Fortifications can protect a population, but they can also imply fear. Sparta preferred to imagine defense as a living quality carried by citizens. The boast worked because enemies believed Spartan soldiers were unusually steady in the field. An unwalled city also fit the broader Spartan suspicion of comfort. Walls might encourage people to hide behind masonry, rather than meet danger directly. Yet the idea contained risk. Human walls age, shrink, and suffer defeat. Stone can stand while armies fail. For a long time, the symbolism was powerful enough to matter. Sparta turned absence into a message. Where other cities displayed height and thickness, Sparta displayed confidence in trained bodies. Later, Sparta finally built walls when old confidence faded. There came a point when the old boast could no longer carry the same force. As Sparta's dominance weakened and enemies pressed closer, practical defense became harder to dismiss. Fortifications appeared in later periods, marking a profound change in the city's self-image. This was not simply construction. It was an admission that the conditions around Sparta had altered. The men who once seemed to serve as living ramparts were no longer enough to guarantee safety. To build walls was to accept the logic that other cities had embraced long before. In symbolic terms, it was almost a confession. The old legend had rested on fearless exposure. The new reality required barriers. That does not mean Sparta became cowardly. It means history had changed around it. The decision shows how reputation and necessity can collide. Even a city built on defiance may eventually choose stone when memory is no longer a sufficient defense. Archaeology shows Sparta was plainer than its fearsome reputation. Visitors who expect ruins as dramatic as Athens or Corinth can be surprised by Sparta. The material remains do not match the size of the legend. This contrast is one of the most intriguing things about the city. Sparta shaped history through institutions, reputation, and military power, rather than through monumental architecture on the same scale as some rivals. Its physical plainness may reflect real social values, but it also reminds us that power does not always leave grand buildings behind. Archaeology has uncovered sanctuaries, public spaces, inscriptions, and domestic traces. Yet the city's remains feel modest beside its fame. That mismatch forces a different kind of attention. Instead of being overwhelmed by temples, we have to imagine habits, relationships, and systems. Sparta survives less as a skyline than as a social experiment. Its most imposing monument was not stone. It was the memory of a way of life that other Greeks could not stop discussing. Sparta's ruins seem modest beside its enormous historical shadow. The place itself can feel almost quiet when measured against the stories attached to it. You might expect a city that terrified rivals to leave behind colossal remains. Instead, the landscape asks for imagination. Fragments of walls, sanctuaries, theaters, and foundations mark a community whose influence far exceeded its visible footprint. This modesty can make Sparta more haunting, not less. The absence of overwhelming ruins leaves room for the question that matters most. How did a city with so little architectural spectacle produce such a lasting hold on history? The answer lies in the power of reputation. Sparta became an idea as much as a place. Later, ages filled gaps with admiration, criticism, myth, and political fantasy. The physical site reminds us that history is not preserved only in marble. Sometimes the strongest legacy is a story people keep retelling because it unsettles them. Sparta's shadow grew larger than its stones. The Eurotas Valley gave Sparta fertile land and natural strength. Sparta stood in a landscape that helped shape its destiny. The Eurotas Valley offered productive ground, access to water, and a natural corridor framed by mountains. This setting gave the city resources that supported population, agriculture, and expansion. It also provided a sense of enclosure. Laconia was not an island, but its geography made it feel distinct from many other Greek regions. Fertile land mattered because ancient power often began with food. A city that could support its households and warriors had advantages before diplomacy or battle even began. The valley's beauty and usefulness formed the stage on which Spartan society developed. It is easy to focus on laws and training, but those systems rested on physical ground. Soil, river, and route all mattered. The landscape did not make Sparta inevitable. It gave Sparta possibilities. Human choices then turned those possibilities into one of the strangest political cultures Greece ever produced. Mount Taygetus formed a dramatic backdrop to Spartan life. The mountain range west of Sparta was more than scenery. It shaped movement, weather, imagination, and the sense of living in a protected but demanding world. Rising behind the city, Taygetus marked the edge between Laconia and Messenia. Its slopes held paths, settlements, sanctuaries, and stories. For anyone growing up in Sparta, the mountains would have been a constant presence on the horizon. They reminded people that geography could both shelter and divide. Ancient traditions connected rugged terrain with testing the body, guarding territory, and approaching the divine. The mountain also added drama to the city's visual identity. Sparta may not have displayed grand walls for much of its history, but it stood beneath a natural monument far older than any human work. Taygetus gave the Spartan world height and severity. It helped make the valley feel like a place set apart, where landscape and culture seemed to harden one another. Sparta controlled a territory far larger than most Greek cities. Many Greek poleis were compact communities with limited surrounding land. Sparta was different. Through conquest and control, it came to dominate a broad stretch of the southern Peloponnese. This scale made it unusual. Its territory included Laconia and, for a long period, Messenia, giving it more agricultural reach than most rivals. That size helped explain its power, but it also complicated its politics. A larger territory required managing dependent communities, guarding borders, and keeping communication across varied landscapes. Sparta was therefore not just a single urban center with nearby fields. It was the head of a regional system. This wider control allowed its citizen class to live in an exceptional way, but it also created permanent obligations. The city had to maintain authority over people and places beyond its immediate center. The greatness of Spartan territory was both an asset and a burden. It made the city formidable, and it gave it more to lose. Its power came from land, discipline, and conquered labor. Sparta's strength was never the result of one factor alone. Land gave it resources. Discipline gave it a distinctive citizen identity. Forced agricultural labor gave that citizen group the time to train and govern. Together, these elements created a system that seemed almost unbreakable from the outside. Remove one, and the whole structure weakened. Land without discipline might have produced an ordinary regional power. Discipline without resources could not sustain a ruling class. Labor without constant control could become revolt. This interdependence is what makes Sparta so historically fascinating. Its famous warriors were not separate from economics. Its politics were not separate from conquest. Its ideals were not separate from coercion. Everything connected. When the system worked, it produced a reputation unmatched in Greece. When one part began to fail, the others felt the strain. Sparta was powerful because its institutions locked together, but that same locking made failure spread through the whole design. Spartan music and dance were once famous across Greece. The popular image of Sparta leaves little room for art, but early Sparta had a rich musical reputation. Poets, performers, choruses, and festivals helped shape civic life. Song and movement were not distractions from discipline. They were part of how the community educated emotion, memory, and identity. Choral performance could teach timing, order, and shared belonging. Music also connected Sparta to the wider Greek world, where artistic excellence brought prestige. Famous poets worked there, and Spartan festivals drew attention beyond Laconia. This matters because it softens the one-dimensional image of the city. Spartans were not silent machines who only marched and fought. They lived in a culture where rhythm and public performance had serious meaning. Dance could train bodies. Song could preserve values. Ceremony could bind people together. To hear about Spartan music is to glimpse a different city, one where discipline did not always mean the absence of beauty. Tyrtaeus wrote poetry that turned courage into civic duty. The poet Tyrtaeus became closely associated with Spartan martial identity. His verses urged men to stand firm, honor the city, and treat courage as a shared obligation rather than a private thrill. Poetry in this context was not entertainment alone. It was public instruction. A song could enter memory more deeply than a roar, especially when performed among people who already valued rhythm and discipline. Tyrtaeus gave language to the ideal of the citizen soldier. He made bravery sound like belonging. The individual body mattered because it held a place in the line. The fear of death was answered by the promise of honor among one's people. Whether every poem attributed to him is exactly as performed in early Sparta, his importance is clear. He shows that military culture was built not only through drills, but through words that could settle inside the mind. Sparta's courage had a soundtrack. Spartan festivals mixed religious devotion with athletic display. Public celebration in Sparta often joined worship with controlled physical performance. This combination made sense in a society that treated the body as a civic instrument. Festivals honored the gods, but they also displayed training, endurance, and collective order. Young people could perform before the community, turning discipline into spectacle. Such events offered more than entertainment. They allowed the city to see itself. Citizens, families, visitors, and subject populations all witnessed a public version of Spartan values. The divine and the social were woven together through ceremony. This is important because religion was not a separate corner of life in ancient Greece. It shaped calendars, decisions, identities, and public confidence. In Sparta, a festival could remind everyone that strength had sacred approval and communal purpose. The theme was not merely people competing or singing. It was a city renewing its story about what kind of people it claimed to be. The Gymnopedia celebrated endurance through dance and public performance. One of Sparta's major festivals placed trained bodies at the center of civic display. The Gymnopedia involved choruses and performances that ancient observers linked with discipline, memory, and communal pride. The name suggests naked or lightly clothed youths, which points to the Greek habit of associating athletic display with beauty, strength, and public honor. For Sparta, this kind of performance was never just graceful movement. It was a social lesson. Bodies moved together, generations were represented, and the community watched its own ideals take visible form. Dance could become a language of order. Endurance could be shown without battle. The festival also connected the living to the honored dead, because public remembrance was part of Spartan identity. Through repeated performance, the city taught itself what mattered. It is a reminder that Sparta did not rely only on fear and training grounds. It also used ceremony to make discipline feel beautiful, ancestral. and shared. Artemis Orthia's sanctuary hosted harsh rites for Spartan youths. At a sanctuary near the Eurotas, Spartan boys took part in rituals that became famous for severity. The goddess worshipped there, Artemis Orthia, was connected to youth, transition, and the dangerous passage into adult life. Ancient accounts describe competitions in which boys endured whipping, especially in later periods when the rite became known to outsiders. The meaning likely changed over time, but the core idea was powerful. Pain, performance, religion, and public watching came together in one place. A youth did not merely suffer privately. He displayed endurance before the community and under the eyes of the divine. This made hardship sacred as well as social. The sanctuary shows how Sparta turned physical testing into ritual meaning. It also reminds us that ancient religion could be demanding, not comforting in a simple way. To approach adulthood in Sparta was to pass through institutions where the body became proof of inner control. The whipping ritual became a spectacle under Roman rule. Long after Sparta had lost its old political dominance, visitors still came to see what they believed were ancient Spartan customs. Under Roman influence, the harsh rites at Artemis Orthia's sanctuary developed into a public spectacle that could draw spectators. What may once have been a local initiation became part of heritage performance. This is fascinating because it shows how Sparta survived as theatre after it declined as a power. Romans admired old severity, and Sparta offered a living museum of discipline. Young participants endured pain before an audience that came partly for awe and partly for curiosity. The ritual, therefore, became layered. It was religious, local, historical, and performative all at once. The city had become famous for toughness, and later Spartans could present toughness as a tradition worth watching. In that transformation, we see how cultures packaged their past. Sparta's image did not die. It learned to perform itself for outsiders. Spartan religion shaped warfare before any army marched. Before a campaign began, military decisions were entangled with ritual obligation. Sacrifices, omens, festivals, and divine approval mattered deeply. A modern commander may think first of speed and supply, but a Spartan leader had to consider whether action was religiously proper. This could delay movement, shape confidence, or affect the way events were interpreted afterward. To us, it may seem strange that sacred signs could influence strategy. In the ancient Greek world, ignoring the gods could look more dangerous than ignoring an enemy. Soldiers wanted to believe that their city marched in harmony with divine will. Ritual also gave structure to fear. Before men faced uncertainty, sacrifice created a moment of order and meaning. For Sparta, a campaign was not only a political act. It was a passage into danger and a sacred attention. The army did not simply leave the city. It stepped into a world where human courage and divine favor had to meet. The Carnaia festival delayed Spartan action during critical wars. Religious calendars could shape history in startling ways. The Carnaia, an important festival of Apollo, imposed restrictions that affected when Spartans could march. During moments of crisis, this created tension between urgency and piety. Ancient accounts connect such delays with major conflicts, including the Persian invasion. To modern readers, it can be tempting to see this as irrational hesitation. For Spartans, however, violating sacred obligation could threaten the whole moral order of the campaign. A city famed for discipline was also disciplined by its gods. This makes the festival historically important. It shows that Spartan obedience was not only military or political, it was religious. The timing of war had to fit a sacred framework. That could frustrate allies who wanted immediate help, but it also reveals the ancient mindset with unusual clarity. Sparta did not imagine success as human effort alone. Victory required acting at the right time in the eyes of heaven. Oracles and omens could restrain even Sparta's strongest kings. Royal authority had limits beyond law and politics. Divine signs could shape what a king dared to do. Before battle, sacrifices were watched closely. Prophecies from sacred sites carried weight. An unfavorable omen could halt action, even when military opportunity seemed near. This reveals a world in which leadership required interpretation as much as command. A king who ignored sacred warnings risked more than personal failure. He risked being blamed for angering the gods and endangering the city. That pressure made religion a real force in decision-making. It also gave other people a way to judge royal behavior. A brave commander still had to appear pious. A powerful king still had to wait if the signs were wrong. Sparta's reputation for discipline sometimes makes it seem brutally practical. In truth, its practicality existed inside a sacred universe. The strongest leader could command men, but he could not simply command the divine. Sparta sent fewer colonies than many Greek rivals. Greek history is full of cities sending settlers across the Mediterranean, but Sparta was not one of the great colonizing powers. Its focus stayed unusually fixed on controlling its own region and maintaining its social system at home. This choice made sense. Expansion overseas required flexibility, trade networks, and citizens willing to create new communities far from the old order. Sparta's ruling class was too precious and too tightly controlled to scatter easily. The city's energy was directed toward land power in the Peloponnese and the management of dependent populations. That does not mean Spartans never traveled or influenced distant places. It means colonization did not become central to their identity in the way it did for some other Greeks. This restraint adds another layer to Sparta's distinctiveness. While other communities looked outward across the sea, Sparta looked inward toward discipline, territory, and control. Its empire of habit mattered more than an empire of colonies. Taras in southern Italy became Sparta's most famous colony. The settlement known to the Greeks as Taras, later Tarentum, stands out because Spartan colonization was so rare. Its foundation tradition was unusual and connected with a group called the Parthenai, whose status at Sparta was disputed in ancient stories. Rather than becoming a simple extension of Spartan society, Taras developed into a wealthy and culturally vibrant Greek city in southern Italy. It grew through trade, naval activity, and local opportunity. This makes it fascinating because it shows a Spartan connection taking root in a very different environment. Taras did not become another Sparta. It became its own powerful community, shaped by Italian geography and Mediterranean exchange. The contrast is striking. From a famously austere mother city came a colony known for prosperity and luxury. Ancient history often works this way. A community born from one identity can flourish by becoming something else. Taras preserves the rare moment when Spartan history looked outward across the sea. Spartan identity was built on belonging to the group. The individual citizen was expected to understand himself through the community. From youth onward, he was placed among peers, judged by elders, fed with comrades, and trained to think in terms of collective honor. This does not mean Spartans had no personal ambition. They did. But ambition had to pass through public expectations. A man gained respect by showing that he could serve the group under pressure. His identity was reinforced through repeated habits that made isolation difficult. He ate with others, trained with others, fought beside others, and lived under the gaze of others. This constant visibility created powerful cohesion. It also narrowed the space for private difference. To belong was a privilege, but it was also a demand. The citizen body became a kind of living institution. Each member helped define the others. Sparta's strength came from making people feel that standing apart was less honorable than standing together. Personal glory mattered less than holding position in formation. Greek heroic stories often celebrate the outstanding individual, but hoplite warfare rewarded steadiness in the line. Sparta pushed that lesson further than most. A warrior who chased personal fame could endanger the men beside him. The formation required patience, timing, and trust. Holding one's place might look less dramatic than a bold charge, yet it was the core of battlefield survival. This idea reshaped courage. Bravery was not simply rushing forward. It was resisting the urge to flee, boast, or break order. The best soldier was not the loudest hero. He was the man who stayed where the formation needed him. That value matched Sparta's wider social design. The city trained citizens to think of themselves as parts of a larger body. Glory still existed, but it came through service to the line. In that world, discipline could be more admirable than daring. The quiet act of not moving became a form of greatness. The phalanx made each soldier depend on his neighbor. A hoplite line was a human structure made of shields, spears, bodies, and trust. Each man protected part of himself, but also part of the person next to him. This arrangement turned battle into a test of mutual dependence. No warrior could imagine himself completely separate. If one man lost courage, the danger spread. If the line held, even ordinary individuals became difficult to break. The phalanx therefore suited Sparta's social philosophy perfectly. It made visible what the city taught in daily life. You survived by belonging. You mattered because others relied on you. The formation was not graceful in a romantic sense. It was heavy, close, frightening, and intensely physical. Men pushed forward through dust, noise, and pressure while trying to keep order. In that crush, training became memory in the muscles. The soldier did not have time to invent courage. He had to find it in the bond formed before battle began. Spartan shields protected the man beside them most. A hoplite shield was built for a world where courage had to be shared. It covered the left side of its bearer, but it also extended toward the right side of the next man in line. That design made every soldier partly responsible for another body. Protection was never completely private. A man who shifted away from danger could expose his neighbor. A man who stood firm helped preserve the whole front. This physical fact turned into a moral lesson that suited Sparta perfectly. The shield taught dependence through weight, pressure, and fear. It reminded each fighter that survival belonged to the formation, not just the individual. Imagine the force of that idea in battle. Your life rested partly in another man's arm. His life rested partly in yours. That is why the shield became such a powerful symbol of duty. It was not merely carried into battle. It carried the meaning of belonging. Cowardice brought social isolation that could last a lifetime. In Sparta, fear itself was human, but being seen as dishonorable could destroy a man's place in society. Ancient writers describe harsh treatment for those judged to have failed in battle. They might be avoided in public, mocked, excluded from normal respect, or forced into visible humiliation. The details varied in memory, but the message was clear. Shame did not end when the battle ended. It followed a person home. This made courage a social necessity rather than a private virtue. A man had to face not only the enemy, but the judgment of everyone who would remember how he behaved. That pressure was part of Sparta's machinery. It made the cost of failure terrifying before a spear was ever thrown. Yet it also reveals a severe emotional world. The city demanded steadiness, then punished the broken with loneliness. To lose honor, there was not simply to lose praise. It was to lose belonging. Men who survived defeat sometimes faced suspicion at home. Coming back alive could be complicated if others had died in a way the city considered honorable. Survival was not always celebrated. It could raise questions. Why did this man return when better men did not? Did he hold his ground? Did he leave too soon? Did chance spare him, or did conduct shame him? Such suspicion reveals how dangerous Spartan values could become for the individual. The community judged outcomes through its ideals, but real battles are chaotic. Dust, wounds, confusion, and broken commands can decide who lives. Still, Sparta wanted clear moral meanings. Victory proved strength. A noble death could prove devotion. Survival after disaster sat uneasily between those categories. This is why the aftermath of battle could be another trial. A man might escape enemy weapons only to face the eyes of his own city. In Sparta, returning home was not the end of danger. Reputation was waiting at the gate. Sparta used shame as a powerful political weapon. Law can punish the body, but shame reaches deeper. Sparta understood this with unusual force. Public opinion, ritualized mockery, exclusion, and loss of status could make citizens police themselves. A person did not need a guard beside him every moment if he had been trained to fear disgrace. This gave the community a quiet kind of control. It worked through glances, stories, songs, and the memory of what happened to those who failed expectations. Shame could encourage bravery, restraint, obedience, and conformity. It could also crush anyone who did not fit the ideal. That is what makes it such a powerful and unsettling tool. It turns society into a courtroom that never fully closes. People carry the judgment of others inside their own minds. In Sparta, honor was not a soft decoration. It was a system of pressure. To be respected was to breathe freely. To be shamed was to live under invisible weight. Spartan education aimed to make obedience feel instinctive. The deepest goal of Spartan training was not simply to teach rules. It was to make response automatic. When an order came, a citizen should not hesitate long enough for fear or self-interest to take command. That kind of obedience had to be built slowly. It came through repetition, supervision, competition, and the constant experience of being judged by others. Boys learned to move together, answer quickly, accept discomfort, and respect hierarchy. Over time, the pattern could sink below conscious thought. This mattered because battle gives little room for debate. A formation survives when men act in rhythm before panic spreads. Sparta tried to produce adults whose bodies and minds had already rehearsed discipline for years. The result could be impressive and frightening at the same time. It created reliability, but it narrowed freedom. The citizen became strong by learning to react as the city expected. Obedience was not only taught, it was absorbed. Boys were encouraged to steal food but punished for clumsiness. One of the strangest traditions about Spartan training says boys were allowed, or even expected, to steal extra food because their rations were deliberately limited. The point was not to praise theft in an ordinary moral sense. It was to train stealth, resourcefulness, and nerve under pressure. If a boy was caught, the punishment came not for wanting food, but for failing to get away with it. This story feels almost shocking because it turns hunger into a lesson and wrongdoing into a test of competence. Sparta wanted youths who could improvise without losing discipline. A soldier might one day need to survive in enemy territory, move unseen, or endure scarcity without complaint. The practice also taught that cleverness mattered, but only when matched by control. It was not enough to be bold. One had to be effective. Even mischief was folded into the state's purpose, which is part of what makes Spartan education so unsettling. Hunger was used to train cunning as well as toughness. Scarcity can break people, but Sparta tried to turn it into instruction. Limited food taught boys to endure discomfort, yet it also pushed them to think. A hungry child watches more closely. He learns where supplies are kept, who is paying attention, and when a moment can be used. This was not accidental cruelty without purpose. It belonged to a wider belief that hardship could sharpen the mind as well as harden the body. A future soldier might face bad weather, failed supplies, or a campaign where food could not be guaranteed. He needed more than strength. He needed practical intelligence under strain. Hunger made training immediate because the body could not ignore it. Every empty feeling became a reminder that survival demanded attention. The lesson was severe, but memorable. Sparta did not imagine cleverness as something separate from endurance. It tried to make the two grow together, under pressure, in the life of a child. Spartan speech gave us the word laconic. The region around Sparta was called Laconia, and from it came a term that still describes speech stripped down to its sharpest form. A laconic answer says little and lands hard. The survival of that word is remarkable. It means a local habit of expression became part of world vocabulary. Ancient stories made Spartan replies famous because they seemed to contain an entire attitude in a few words. They did not persuade through ornament. They struck through compression. This style was especially memorable in a Greek world that admired rhetoric, debate, and elaborate public speaking. Sparta stood out by making restraint sound powerful. The word that came from its homeland now carries that legacy. When we call a person laconic, we are unknowingly pointing back to a culture that treated brevity as evidence of control. Language itself became part of Sparta's afterlife. A whole civilization survives in the meaning of a single adjective. A short Spartan reply could become a political weapon. Words can do political work when they are memorable enough to travel. Spartan sayings often reduced threats, negotiations, and insults to a few devastating lines. A longer speech might explain policy, but a sharp reply could shape reputation instantly. It showed confidence, denied fear, and made the speaker appear impossible to intimidate. This mattered in diplomacy because ancient politics was full of performance. Cities watched how rivals answered pressure. A reply that made an enemy look foolish could strengthen morale at home and impress allies abroad. Some famous examples may have been polished after the fact, but their popularity proves the point. People wanted Sparta to speak this way because the style matched its image. The city seemed to answer the world without pleading or ornament. A concise response could travel farther than an army because it carried attitude in portable form. In Sparta's legend, speech did not need length to have force. It needed nerve. Philip of Macedon received one of Sparta's boldest answers. A famous story says that Philip II warned Sparta what would happen if he entered Laconia. The Spartan answer was supposedly one word: if. Whether the exchange happened exactly this way is debated, but its survival tells us something powerful. By the 4th century before the Common Era, Macedon had become a force that could dominate Greek politics. Sparta was no longer the power it had once been. Yet the story presents the city as refusing to surrender its voice. The brilliance of the reply lies in its refusal to argue. It turns a threat into a condition that has not yet occurred. It gives no concession, no fear, and no unnecessary explanation. That single word became a monument to defiance. It may reveal more about Spartan reputation than diplomatic reality, but reputation matters in history. The tale endures because it captures the pleasure of seeing power answered by perfect brevity. Sparta refused to submit even when Macedon dominated Greece. After Macedon rose under Philip and then Alexander, many Greek cities had to accept a new political reality. Sparta resisted incorporation into the League of Corinth, which made its position unusual. The refusal did not restore its old dominance, but it preserved a fierce sense of independence. This was not the confident resistance of a leading superpower. It was the stubbornness of a city whose greatest days were behind it, yet whose pride remained intact. That makes the episode compelling. Sparta could not command Greece as it once had, but it could still say no. Such defiance carried risk, especially in a world where Macedonian armies had proven their strength. It also reinforced the image that later generations loved to remember. Sparta might decline in resources, numbers, and influence, but it did not easily abandon the language of autonomy. Even when history moved past it, the city tried to stand apart. Alexander did not need to conquer Sparta to rule Greece. When Alexander inherited Macedonian power, his attention quickly turned toward the Persian Empire. Sparta remained outside his grand coalition, but he did not make its conquest a priority before marching east. This says a great deal about the changed balance of power. Once, Sparta had been central to any Greek political order. Now, it could be bypassed. That is almost more revealing than defeat. A city can survive and still become strategically unnecessary. Alexander's campaigns transformed the scale of Greek ambition. The old rivalries of the mainland became smaller beside the invasion of Asia. Sparta's refusal to join mattered symbolically, but it did not stop the Macedonian project. Later, when Spartan resistance flared under King Agis, Macedonian power dealt with it without Alexander's direct presence. The larger story is humbling. Sparta remained proud, but the world had widened. Its legend still burned, yet the center of history had moved elsewhere. Spartan prestige lasted long after its real power declined. Some cities lose influence and then fade quickly from memory. Sparta did something stranger. Its political and military strength diminished, yet its name remained charged with meaning. Philosophers, historians, politicians, and moralists kept returning to it as an example. For some, it represented discipline and public virtue. For others, it represented cruelty and repression. That argument kept Sparta alive in thought long after it stopped dominating events. Prestige can outlast power because reputation does not depend entirely on current strength. It depends on stories, symbols, and the uses later people find for them. Sparta offered a particularly useful image because it was extreme. It could be admired or condemned with equal intensity. That made it endlessly reusable. The city became a mirror in which later societies examined their own fears about luxury, freedom, equality, order, and sacrifice. Its armies no longer ruled Greece, but its example still marched through the imagination. Roman tourists visited Sparta to watch ancient customs performed. By the Roman period, Sparta had become a destination for people fascinated by its past. Visitors came not only to see places, but to witness traditions associated with the old discipline. This transformed Sparta into something like a heritage city. Customs that once belonged to civic life could be staged for outsiders who wanted contact with an ancient ideal. The spectacle at Artemis Orthia is the most famous example, but the wider pattern is just as interesting. Sparta learned to live partly from its own reputation. Romans admired toughness, antiquity, and moral severity, and Sparta offered all three in concentrated form. The city's old power had faded, but its brand remained astonishingly strong. There is something almost modern about this. A place becomes famous for a past that visitors want to experience. Local identity then adapts to that expectation. Sparta was no longer ruling Greece. It was performing Sparta. Later writers turned Sparta into both warning and ideal. No single version of Sparta survived. Different authors shaped it for different purposes. Some praised its discipline, simplicity, and devotion to the common good. Others pointed to its harshness, inequality, and fear of change. This split is one reason the city remains so compelling. It resists easy judgment. A philosopher could use it to criticize luxury. A democrat could use it to warn against repression. A military thinker could admire its training. A social critic could expose the suffering beneath its order. The real Sparta became tangled with imagined Spartas, each one built from selected details. Later writers did not merely preserve the city, they argued through it. That process turned Sparta into a tool of political thought. Whenever people debate whether strength is worth the cost of freedom, Sparta can reappear. Its history became a question that different ages answered differently. That is a rare kind of afterlife. Modern myths often exaggerate Spartan equality and simplicity. The popular image of Sparta is clean, hard, and easy to remember. It shows a society of equal warriors living plainly and serving the state without selfishness. The reality was more uneven. Wealth existed. Status mattered. Many residents were excluded from citizenship. The famous simplicity of the ruling class depended on complex systems that are often left out of modern retellings. This does not make Sparta less interesting. It makes it more interesting. Myths flatten the city into a symbol, while history restores its contradictions. The citizens may have shared certain meals and training, but they did not live in a world free of hierarchy. Their austerity was partly ideal, partly practice, and partly reputation. Modern culture often prefers the dramatic outline because it is easier to admire. The deeper story asks harder questions. Who paid for simplicity? Who counted as equal? What gets hidden when a society becomes a legend? Spartan women inspired fascination because they challenged Greek expectations. Ancient observers could not stop commenting on Spartan women because they seemed to disturb familiar categories. In many Greek cities, women's public visibility was limited by custom and ideal. Sparta's women appeared more outspoken, physically trained, and economically active. This did not mean their world was free of constraint. Their status was tied closely to the needs of the state and the production of legitimate citizen families. Still, their presence stood out sharply enough to become a subject of admiration and criticism. They entered Greek imagination as bold figures, capable of memorable speech and unusual confidence. That fascination tells us as much about the observers as about Sparta itself. People notice what unsettles their expectations. Spartan women became famous because they forced outsiders to ask whether female behavior they considered improper might be normal somewhere else. In that sense, they reveal how varied Greek society could be. There was no single ancient Greek way of being a woman. Some ancient critics thought Spartan women had too much influence. Aristotle and others worried that women in Sparta held a level of power that undermined the state. Their criticism was tied especially to property and household influence. To them, the problem was not simply moral discomfort. It was political. If land and wealth concentrated in the hands of women, then a city built around male citizen soldiers could become dependent on people excluded from formal rule. The anxiety is revealing. It shows that influence does not always require office. Control over property, marriage alliances, inheritance, and domestic management could shape public outcomes indirectly. Critics frame this as disorder because it did not fit their ideal of how a disciplined city should operate. Yet the complaint also confirms that Spartan women mattered. They were not invisible figures in the background. They occupied spaces of consequence, even in a society that denied them official political power. The criticism preserves a hidden truth. Influence often travels along routes law does not name. Aristotle blamed Spartan decline partly on concentrated land ownership. When Aristotle analyzed Sparta, he did not treat its problems as mysterious. He looked at structure. One issue he identified was the concentration of land into too few hands. If property gathered among a limited number of families, then fewer citizens could meet the economic demands of full status. That helped shrink the ruling body and weaken the state from within. This criticism is powerful because it moves beyond battlefield stories. It suggests that Sparta's decline was tied to ownership, inheritance, and social imbalance. A city can train brave soldiers and still be undone by property patterns. Aristotle's view also challenges the ideal of Spartan equality. If wealth became concentrated, then the image of a community of similar citizens becomes harder to sustain. The lesson reaches far beyond Greece. Military strength cannot fully protect a society whose foundations become uneven. Sometimes decline begins not with an invasion, but with the quiet movement of land between households. Sparta's military focus created strength and long-term fragility. Specialization can produce astonishing results. Sparta devoted itself to making a particular kind of citizen and a particular kind of army. For a time, that focus brought fear, respect, and real power. Yet the same focus limited what the city could become. Trade, innovation, naval development, and broad inclusion mattered increasingly in Greek politics. Sparta could adapt when forced, but adaptation was never easy for a society built around preserving its distinctive order. Military excellence also depended on a citizen class that was expensive to maintain and hard to replenish. This created a paradox. The system that made Sparta famous also made it vulnerable to losses and change. Its strength was genuine, but narrow. When conditions favored that strength, Sparta seemed extraordinary. When conditions shifted, narrowness became danger. The story is compelling because it shows that success can trap a society. What makes you powerful in one age may leave you exposed in the next. The society that prized discipline struggled to replace citizens. Sparta's most valuable product was the full citizen soldier, but producing one required birth, upbringing, property, acceptance, and years of training. That made replacement slow and difficult. A battlefield loss was not just a number. It was the disappearance of a rare social investment. The city could not easily broaden citizenship without changing what citizenship meant. It could not ignore decline without weakening its army. This dilemma grew more serious over time. A society that demanded excellence from a small group had to keep that group large enough to matter. When it failed, the whole system tightened like a shrinking ring. Discipline could make existing citizens formidable, but it could not summon new ones quickly. That is the tragedy hidden inside the Spartan model. It was better at shaping men than replacing them. Each generation had to carry an enormous burden. If too few remained, even perfect training could not fill the empty spaces. Heavy labor made Spartan freedom possible for the few. The celebrated liberty of the Spartan citizen rested on an unfree foundation. Full citizens could spend their lives in training, public meals, politics, and military readiness because others performed the agricultural work that sustained them. This is one of the most important truths about the city. Freedom was not shared equally. It was concentrated. For the ruling group, freedom meant release from ordinary labor and full participation in the civic order. For those beneath them, that same system meant obligation, extraction, and control. This contradiction gives Sparta its moral weight. It was not simply a brave society or a cruel society. It was both, depending on where a person stood. The citizen experienced discipline as honor. The dependent worker experienced discipline as domination. And the honest account has to hold these realities together. Sparta's freedom was real for those inside the circle, but the circle was small. Its greatness and injustice were built into the same arrangement. Spartan austerity may have been partly reputation and performance. The image of absolute plainness is one of Sparta's strongest legends, but real life was probably more complicated. Some citizens owned land, managed wealth, and participated in networks of influence. The city discouraged luxury as an ideal, yet ideals do not always erase desire. What matters is that austerity became a public performance of identity. Spartans were expected to appear controlled, simple, and resistant to softness. Outsiders then amplified this image because it made Sparta seem unlike other cities. Stories about harsh food, iron money, plain clothing, and severe habits became proof of moral toughness. Some were grounded in practice. Others may have grown sharper through repetition. The result was a culture where reputation mattered almost as much as reality. To be Spartan was partly to live under an expectation of hardness. Even if private life sometimes differed, the public image had power. Austerity became something the city enacted for itself and for the watching world. Not all Spartans lived the harsh ideal equally. No society matches its own slogans perfectly. Sparta praised discipline, equality among citizens, and suspicion of luxury. Yet individuals lived within families, property arrangements, ambitions, and personal differences. Some households were wealthier than others. Some citizens held more influence. Some may have embraced the old standards with conviction, while others navigated them more conveniently. This is important because the legend often makes Sparta seem like a single mind. In reality, it was made of people. They argued, desired, feared, inherited, lost status, and sought advantage. The ideal mattered because it shaped expectations, but it did not turn everyone into the same person. Recognizing this makes the city more human. It also makes the system more interesting. The pressure to conform must have been intense precisely because variation existed. Public discipline worked against private difference. Behind the famous mask of Spartan severity were individual lives trying to survive within a demanding story about what a Spartan should be. The word Spartan still means severe, disciplined, and plain. Few ancient city names have become such a strong adjective. When people describe a room, routine, diet, or lifestyle as Spartan, they usually mean stripped down, tough, and without luxury. That linguistic survival is extraordinary. It shows that the city's reputation escaped the ancient world and entered everyday speech. Many people who use the word know little about Laconia, Helots, Ephes, or Greek warfare. Yet the impression remains. Sparta stands for a certain kind of hardness. Language has preserved the outline of a civilization more efficiently than stone. The word carries admiration and discomfort at the same time. A Spartan life can sound noble, focused, and free from waste. It can also sound bleak, joyless, or severe. That double meaning suits the historical city perfectly. Sparta still lives in vocabulary because it became a symbol that people can use instantly. The name survived by turning into a way of describing human character. Sparta's legend survived because it feels both heroic and troubling. Some histories last because they are easy to admire. Sparta lasts because admiration is never simple. The city offers courage, discipline, sacrifice, and public devotion. It also offers coercion, exclusion, fear, and rigidity. That mixture keeps it alive in the mind. A purely heroic Sparta would become propaganda. A purely monstrous Sparta would become a warning with little mystery. The real fascination lies in the tension. People are drawn to the bravery, then forced to confront the cost. They admire the steadiness, then notice who was made to support it. They respect the refusal of luxury, then ask whether human life can be narrowed too much. This unresolved quality makes Sparta endlessly discussable. It becomes a place where values collide. How much should a person give to the community? What does strength become when it loses compassion? Sparta survives because it does not let us rest in one answer. It demands judgment, then complicates it. Ancient Sparta fascinates us because admiration and unease meet there. The city sits in a rare space in historical memory. It can stir respect and discomfort almost at the same moment. People admire the training, courage, and refusal to bend. Then they encounter the controlled population, the harsh upbringing, and the narrow definition of belonging. That collision is the heart of its power over us. Sparta asks whether discipline can be separated from domination. It asks whether a society built for strength can remain fully human. It asks whether simplicity is noble when it rests on hidden suffering. These questions do not belong only to the ancient world. They return whenever people praise order, toughness, sacrifice, or national purpose. Sparta becomes a test case because it took those values so far. We keep looking back because the city feels clear from a distance and complicated up close. It draws us in with certainty, then leaves us standing among doubts. Its greatest mystery is how discipline became a whole civilization. Many societies train armies, but Sparta went further. It built institutions, customs, education, politics, reputation, and family expectations around a single demanding ideal. That is the mystery at the center of its story. How did a community make discipline feel not like one virtue among many, but like the organizing principle of life? The answer cannot be found in one law or one leader. It grew from conquest, fear, geography, tradition, religion, and repeated social practice. Over generations, habits hardened into identity. Children entered the system before they could fully question it. Adults reinforced it through honor and shame. Outsiders strengthened it by retelling Spartan difference with amazement. Eventually, discipline became more than behavior. It became the city's explanation for itself. That transformation is astonishing. Sparta shows how a society can turn an ideal into an environment. People did not merely believe in the Spartan way, they lived inside it. Sparta's story shows how power can shine and fracture together. The final lesson of Sparta is not simple rise and fall. It is the site of brilliance and weakness growing from the same roots. The city's discipline made it formidable. Its narrow citizenship made it fragile. Its austerity created admiration. Its dependence on coercion created permanent danger. Its refusal to change preserved identity, then limited recovery. This is why Sparta remains one of history's most compelling civilizations. It does not offer a clean moral. It offers a structure where every strength casts a shadow. The warriors who stood so firmly were supported by a system that could not easily renew itself. The reputation that terrified Greece eventually outlived the reality behind it. Yet the memory did not fade, because Sparta reached an intensity few societies ever match. It became a warning and a wonder at once. To study it is to see power not as a solid monument, but as something bright, hard, and capable of cracking from within. And so, our journey through ancient Sparta begins to fade into the distance. We have walked through a world shaped by discipline, courage, pressure, and pride. We have seen a city that became more than a place on a map. It became an idea, a way of life so severe, so focused, and so unforgettable that people are still trying to understand it thousands of years later. Sparta's story was never simple. Behind the red cloaks and polished shields, there were families, farms, rituals, rivalries, and fears. There were young boys shaped by the state. There were women whose confidence startled the ancient world. There were kings watched by officials, soldiers held together by trust, and a whole society balanced on foundations that were powerful but fragile. Perhaps that is why Sparta still holds the imagination. It asks difficult questions in a calm, ancient voice. What makes a society strong? What strength costs? And what remains when reputation outlives power? But for now, those questions can soften. The battlefield can grow still. The footsteps in the training ground can fade. The voices in the assembly can become distant. The mountains above the Eurotas can settle into evening light, while the old city rests beneath the passing centuries. If you enjoyed this journey, you're welcome to like, subscribe, or leave a thought below. It helps others find their way here too. And if you happen to still be awake, there should be another gentle history journey waiting for you on the screen. But there is nothing you need to do now. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your breathing slow. Let the weight of the day fall away, little by little. The story is finished for tonight. The ancient world can rest where it belongs, far behind you now, quiet beneath the stars. Sleep well, and good night.